So with this week's episode of Blade of the Immortal, I definitely have to give major props to not only the sound direction, but also bringing up something that I wasn't really thinking about, but I'm glad they touched upon, and that's the whole immortality angle, because typically when you have it's not even just anime, it's stories in general. You have something that's pretty supernatural or a lot more impressive than an average character in a world. Immortality, superpower, something, right? You give it to a character who will be a primary focus character, whether it's an antagonist, a protagonist, or even just a recurring side character. Typically, that ability or that trait is only associated to them, and you can argue that they are kind of the plot-centric character and that's why they have this ability. And I wasn't thinking about it, I just assumed that only one person got these worms in their blood that allowed them to heal and kind of recover in an unhealthy and unhuman manner. But then we get introduced to this character who's imitating a priest, and it turns out that he's been alive for a couple hundred years, and that curse, it's not just for Manji, it's for pretty much anyone who's unfortunate enough to come into contact with this ability, whether willingly and getting manipulated or just unwillingly, and now you are cursed to eternal life. It's something that I wasn't thinking about, but I do appreciate how early on they brought up this concept of, even though we're following a character who is seemingly immortal and he has this amazing ability, but then again, besides this episode, he actually hasn't won a sword fight. It's usually been either a draw or people have retreated. It's interesting how they bring it up and say, hey, he is a main character, and he does have an ability that probably not a lot of people have. Maybe these two are the only ones who had it currently in the world, but it's not just like he has this ability because he's a main character, and I have to say I appreciate that. It's a small detail, but it does help to make the writing feel a lot more organic and not so force-fed, saying like, oh, this is just a plot-centric reason, let's move to the next plot-centric reason. It's something that maybe not a lot of people will care about, but I do think it helps sell Blade of the Immortal as being something more than just some action-driven show. And I did mention it, the sound effects in this episode were incredible. Literally, the episode kicks off with like these super creepy and unnerving sound effects of just insects, feet tapping on the ground or the wings fluttering. It's honestly nothing creepy as like a horror scene, it's really just Mother Nature. And what's creepy about Mother Nature on a general rainy day, right? But it's something about Blade of the Immortal and the visuals with the sound effects. It was like, are these bugs gonna come inside like our body? Are they going to eat our wounds? Like, what is going on? Like, why are they making us hear these sound effects? And the fact that just a simple disposable scene about insects really was like, okay, I'm ready to watch Blade of the Immortal. It kind of says how well the details are going in. Like, this is a series that clearly, for the director, is a passion project, whether, the masses appreciate it or not. I mean, that's obviously up to the masses to decide, but I definitely can tell that this isn't just some slap-together adaptation. It's something that, there's a lot of attention to detail. The simple sound effects, the OST, and how it will really bring to life these scenes. The voice actors giving it their all, and the artistic direction with the animation, and just, unexpected stabs to the throat or even the chest. Like, there's a lot of details that really impress me quite a bit and really make it feel super cinematic and really artsy a lot of the time. But the main point of this episode definitely was just this dialogue between our main character Manji and this warrior who seemingly wants to betray the people that he fights for, and just the setup to it and how like you have this priest looking in, not acting like a typical priest, and just the swordplay coming out, and just, it was unnerving. It really felt like you knew these two weren't gonna be, traveling partners, right? Like, it seems like he wanted to travel with him, but there's no way he was joining the crew, especially after acting as shady as he did. Like, this isn't just like some random group of high school students who are gonna be like, oh, you wanna be friends? Let's travel the road and kill people together. No. It was not like a matter of were they going to draw blades on each other again. It was a matter of when. And I have to say, I thought he would just part ways and then like 5 episodes from now, 10 episodes from now, he would return and, it'd be this like super intense, like, hey, I said I'd find you again, let's have this duel. But just to see that he has like this poison that is just, it's ridiculous for him because it literally stops his regeneration, and just the amount of pain that causes was something you have to compliment. Even if you're not a fan of like gory scenes, the level of realism they go to portray such an unrealistic scene. Literally a man who can just like cut off his leg, hold it back, and he'll basically attach it again within a matter of minutes. But the way they'll detail like dried blood on the ground to how his blood would like come out of his body, like that was painfully realistic, and the realism from the agony in his face was something that kind of caught me off guard. Like, we've seen a lot of gore in this series, don't get me wrong, but it was something about knowing that this was the first time we felt like he could actually die. Like, clearly something's going wrong. Like, he's not even being attacked, yet he keeps getting these wounds open up on him, and it was as if his body was turning against him. Together with Rin's just horrified reactions, it was a painful scene. I mean, especially when you think, like, minutes prior, it was like, okay, you thought you killed this guy. Turns out he also has the same ability as you. You got, like, the shopkeeper, freaking out, and some sassy remarks coming from our main character. So it was like, it just didn't feel like that was gonna happen. It was like, okay, clearly they're the same, they'll see each other again, and then you learn there's poison. It's just like a lot of unexpected, small, but very memorable curveballs that just kind of are like, god damn, Blade the Immortal is really going in with this viciousness, and I have to say I appreciate it. I mean, it was clear like there was going to be something happening with Rin, and I'm sure some people might want to say, oh, is this going to be like a damsel in distress moment where she keeps getting kidnapped or something, but to me, it feels like she does stand her own ground. Like, hell, she was the reason he was actually able to get killed in this episode, because she threw knives and it gave Manji some time to jump through the trees. Granted, the man wanted to die, so he let it happen, but if it wasn't for that sneak attack, our main character probably would have died. And another thing people might want to say is, like, it kind of seems like our 100 killer, like, he's killed over 100 people, it seems like he does either lose a lot or, come very close. But I have to say I appreciate that, because I honestly thought walking into this anime that he was gonna be this, like, amazing killer who just, like, never was wounded, in the odd time he might get an arm cut off, something like that. But what it seems to be is that, someone who is immortal and doesn't really value his life all that much, because this is a curse. As much as it might appear to be a blessing, it's definitely a curse, and a man who just doesn't take into consideration his own well-being because he believes he'll probably just heal, and if he doesn't, he'll die, and that's not a bad thing to him. It's something that I actually appreciate, because not only does it allow for a lot more gory combat than you're used to with anime, especially for, a TV broadcast. Granted, this is an ONA, so it airs online, but still, like, you definitely don't expect to see this much gore in the flesh as you do. So to me, it's like, even though he's not that cautious, it almost feels like he's sloppy a lot of the times. It almost feels tormented, as if you're watching a character who, on one hand, wants to help this girl reach her destination, but every time he comes close to death, he's not really all that worried. He almost just says, find a new person to travel with, do this, and that's what's actually really interesting, is like, when it comes to her getting kidnapped or, put in danger, it's not like she just stays as some damsel in distress. She usually incorporates herself in an interesting way. And for our main character Manji, it's like, even though he gets hurt so much, it almost feels like on one hand, in the back of his mind, he wants that sweet embrace of death, but on the other hand, he realizes, like, this isn't gonna kill me. Like, this is the first time that he came damn close to actually getting killed by a blade, because yeah, you can cut them up in all these different ways and that will naturally kill them, but just a stab to the throat, that would actually kill him because of the poison. It's like, there's a lot of emotions in this episode. I felt like it really gripped me. It was probably the most exciting episode, is how I'd put it. It just felt like the most uncertain, because not only are you introduced to a character who has the same ability as Manji, you also didn't know what he wanted. Like, he stabbed him, sure, he poisoned him, but like, what's with this dialogue of wanting to join him? And you kind of realize that for him, he just wanted a companion who was the same as him. He mentions, I think he had 5 wives, a bunch of kids, 200 years. That would mess up anyone, even if you're a killer. Like, that, keep having connections ripped away from you and you have to keep forming new ones. Like, seeing a man who is the same as you, even if, like, you try to kill each other, that probably means a lot more than any of the relationships he's had over his life, because you're the same as me. It's not like romantic, it's just like there's a bond that even though Manji may not want, it's like, kill me, I'll kill you, just, you're the same as me. It's something that he doesn't maybe understand completely why he's interested in, but he wants it. And that's why, he lets him kill him in the end, because, not only is it the sweet relief of death, it's also someone the same as him, finally ending that curse. It's like, there's a lot of interesting symbolic messages throughout this show, which I really do appreciate. And even just like the idea that, when Rin was kidnapped, he tried to say, hey, if open wound touches an open wound, you have a very small possibility to become immortal. Granted, we learned that it's probably not the case, but still, it was an interesting scene to just see, like, it almost feels like he wants to see who out there truly is the same as him, but also wants to be the same as him. Like, obviously you knew, should she actually lick the wound, like, she wasn't going to turn immortal, that, or she would just, stop doing it, or, Manji would come in and barge in. But still, it was like, it was something that was quite interesting just on a symbolism layer, because this man, even though we knew he wasn't going to join the main cast. He was either going to die this week or die sometime in the future. We're only at episode 5, right? So there's no way that Manji would stay dead, but maybe he could lose his immortality or something like that, right? There's a lot of ways they could go, but it was just like for a character who was just introduced and immediately killed off, I was the most curious with him out of any character we've seen up to this point, because not only does he bring in characters like, he makes a grandma sabotage a girl's life or her grandson, and then he'll just kill her after because she's a random person, you don't want liabilities, but then he has some of these words that he'll speak, and it feels so human and genuine as if he's actually being tormented himself, but he's doing the tormenting. It's like, that's the little details I look for in anime. The real passionate dialogue where you're not looking at heroes or villains or, antagonists, protagonists. You're just looking at people in a very messed up time period. And even more messed up because there's curses that can inflict you with immortality, and I doubt you could hold on to any morals you once had if you literally have to live for 200 years and watch your wives and children die before you. I mean, it's bad enough from what parents say, like when they have to watch their kids die because it's supposed to be the kids who watch the parents die. Imagine that applied to a killer, like even though he was a killer, like that has to emotionally break you to the point that you're definitely no longer a human. You can already argue these characters aren't human because of their immortality, but that's even more messed up for a mentality-wise. And that's why I love this series. And some of the shots, the way they'll frame it from just blades going to throats or just dramatic zoom-ins, this show is just so gripping to me. And it's a damn shame that not more people are checking it out, but what did everyone think? For either manga readers or anime originals like myself, what are you thinking of Blade the Immortal? This week's episode, the adaptation as a whole, let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.